Business in the 217 on the WMAY morning news feed. I'm Greg Bishop. We're joined now by DSI's Lisa Clemmons Stott, Downtown Springfield Incorporated. And Lisa, an interesting conversation, I think is going to be a series of sorts of what we're going to be talking about here. And I appreciate you bringing it forward because it's a conversation I've heard talked about kind of in the hallways of the of City Hall, for instance. It's never been a really in-depth conversation at city council meetings, but it's the difference between growth and expansion and how those two are not necessarily the same thing. So at DSI, right, you're actually starting this conversation. Tell us about, I guess, the difference between what growth is and what expansion, or what some people may call sprawl, is.
Well, if I can go back a second, we created a book club in the fall, and the book was Strong Towns. And it was brought to me by two young couples who, kind of take care of their part of Springfield. Like they're activists. They want to make their city a better place. A lot of the same things that attract people to an organization like Downtown Springfield, Inc. So we started reading this book, and actually all of the board members of DSI are now reading this book. And it just makes the distinction between, like you're saying, growth and expansion. I think those of us in the Midwest really always think that growth means adding a new subdivision, adding more houses, adding more new houses. But certainly this week, the conversation at the city council about the budget, about having to cut the fire department because we just don't have enough money to cover pensions and other obligations for the size of the city that we do have, really makes this type of thinking really interesting from a fiscal perspective. Do we really have enough capacity to keep growing the boundaries of the city? Can we maintain the infrastructure? Can we keep it going? And I think when you look at the older neighborhoods like downtown Springfield, you can already see the answer to that question. We don't have enough money to even maintain what we have already.
Yeah, and a lot of this is, we like to see expansion sometimes because it makes it feel like we're modernizing things and we're expanding and offering up newer homes to people. But there's a downside to that, and the downside is some of the older infrastructure, especially in downtown Springfield, might get neglected because of the increased cost of maintaining sewer systems that are being added onto newer communities. So how do we refocus in a way to balance the priorities of people who may want to live in a newer home on the outskirts of town versus ensuring that we have a thriving space in the historic areas of downtown Springfield with vacant buildings that are there ripe for people to get into? How do we balance those priorities?
Well, it's kind of flipping the conversation on its head. It's not about, prioritizing downtown or the older neighborhoods as opposed to other newer neighborhoods. It's really looking holistically at our city and saying, where can we get the most bang for our buck? So very much this Strong Towns book talks about value per acre. And when you look at cities all across the country, the districts that start at a city are usually the most financially productive. Even ones like ours that some people have written off and said, things aren't happening down there anymore. They are more financially productive per acre. So think about all the big buildings we have downtown. Think about all the property tax. Think about all the sales tax when tourists come to town. So you have to start thinking, where can we get the most bang for our buck? And the book really lays out that by making more investments in the high value per acre districts, like downtown Springfield, you're actually going to increase that tax base that you need. When we're talking growth, we really should be talking about how do we increase our tax base. So if we add more apartments into downtown upper stories that are vacant right now, which is something that DSI is really working on really closely with our partners, if we do things like that, then we're actually adding to the tax base without having to add new land you have to add sewer, you have to add electricity, you have all these costs, you have to have the fire department get out there in a reasonable amount of time. If we're looking at like the east side vacant lots that could have new homes built on them and things like that, how do we increase the tax base that we have? How do we take care of what we have? And it will actually help us financially.
Well, you got to consider too, the whole idea of if you build it, they will come, right? And by that, I mean, if you have people living in downtown, then services to facilitate those people like grocery stores or entertainment. If people are living downtown, then there's more sustainability for those types of businesses as well. Lisa Clemmons Stott with Downtown Springfield Incorporated here. Who needs to be part of this conversation and the difference between growth versus expansion and seeing the outskirts of town increase capacity versus the older parts of town seeing their investment?
I mean, I think this is a citywide conversation. During the city council meeting on Tuesday, we all love that it's now on Facebook and more citizens can take part. And I was part of that conversation on Facebook, and I saw people saying that, my near West Side neighborhood is starting to fall apart a little bit. It's really a pride issue for Springfield. How do we be proud of what we have? How do we maintain it? How do we show the world that it's beautiful to live here? It really starts with the older neighborhoods, but our lack of ability to maintain what we have is starting to trickle out everywhere. So it's really something that everybody can get involved with. Really easy step is to get the book Strong Towns and start reading it. We have a lot of activity around this book. A lot of people in Springfield are reading it already. We've, talked with economic development about it. We've talked with public works about it. It's just a different way to look at things and really shore up the great things about Springfield.
Lisa Clemmons Stott, of course, this is going to be the first of what I imagine are going to be ongoing conversations just about this overall idea on how to best maximize the use of tax dollars, incentive programs, focusing on maintaining current infrastructure, and how to balance the needs of all those involved here. Downtown Springfield Incorporated, Lisa Clemmons Stott here on the WMAY Morning News Feed, Business in the 217. We'll talk again soon, all right?
Thanks. Happy to be part of the conversation.